Well, hey, welcome to tonight's show. It's a Wednesday. It's 9 days to Christmas now. Boy, this month has gone fast, and it just keeps going fast. How's everybody doing tonight? We got a great guest. Hopefully, we got a great guest. I sent him the info day before yesterday and haven't heard a response yet, so we're about to find out. Um, Clete used to work at Greystone, and that's how he started to hear the stories about all the hauntings and stuff that were going on there, or rather the alleged hauntings. This is a reporter. I have to say alleged hauntings. My name is Charlotte. I'm your host, and welcome. We are the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, www.californiahaunts.org. We're based mainly out of Sacramento, but we have people all over the state of California, Nevada, I believe Hawaii, Washington, and Oregon. So we have a very long reach to get out and help people in need, and that's what we do. We don't charge for our investigations. We go out and we simply help people. It's great to be here tonight. Like I said, Christmas is right around the corner. Santa's going to be coming down that chimney sooner than later. So I all your Christmas shopping done and going into bake mode or doing whatever it is you do. I know I'm still decorating inside the house. I got my outside done finally, and I'm going to be posting videos about that. And hopefully, we'll be taking another tour, Christmas light tour. I see Clete's in the room, and we'll hook in with him in a few minutes. But I'm going to be giving another Christmas light tour. Bear with us during these tours because we're just learning how to use the gimbal, and it's hooked to a mic now, so that's another challenge we have. That the person that's using the gimbal that doesn't drag the mic completely out of my face or anything like that, or yank the cord out. So we're doing that as well. But anyway, we got a great show lined up for a great show tonight for you. I've been really curious about Graystone for years, and I've heard stories about Graystone, and I'm really excited to have this gentleman on. But he's not only, he's not only an author, talking about Graystone. The guy, he has many hats. He's a producer, he's an actor, so it'll be fun talking to him, about his history with Greystone. Again, you can find us at www.californiahaunts.org. We will definitely be here next week. I don't know if we're going to be live. I have a show interview scheduled for 7:30 in the morning, so I may go live later on with it, or it may be a recorded show. I'll let you guys know ahead of time with that. But we got a really great topic, and I'll tell you about that after this show. Because right now, I want to talk to Clete, and I want to hear all about Greystone. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm very good.
I'm so excited to have you on.
It's nice to be here. Let me try to get this up and running here.
Sure, no problem.
Sorry about that.
Isn't this fun? How we have to do all this stuff on camera now?
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Am I okay?
I hear you just fine.
Great. That helps. Okay. Let's do this.
You're loud and clear.
Okay, good. Did you have a question for me? I'm sorry.
Yes. First off, I kind of let everybody know about you, but please do tell them about yourself, because you're not only an author, you wear many hats.
Well, yeah, I've done a lot of things. I started out really as an actor when I was 17 and did a lot of theater until I was in my early 30s. I started at Graystone after I was doing a film, a horrible movie called Cabin Boy, which if you've never seen it, don't. Okay, it's a really horrible movie. And so I was on that film, and they started talking about that they were going to shoot up a Graystone. I said, "What is Graystone?" They said, "It's a mansion. We're using it for the film." I went, "Oh, okay." So it was like maybe five years after that, I was actually working for the city of Beverly Hills and became someone who worked at Graystone, had an office out of Graystone, and was a ranger for. I was at Graystone. I just retired, by the way, December 4th. Which was last Friday. So only been out like 5 or 7 days, whatever it is. But I was there for 22 years and was a ranger. And so I worked events and filming. and also worked like art show events and things, setting that up for the city. So I had a bunch of different hats, but I love being a ranger the most, because that was like I was involved at the location itself and got to see, feel, hear everything was taking place there.
When did you first realize that people were having things happen to them at Greystone?
Right. So when I first started there, I had no idea it was haunted, not a clue. And so when I was there one day, they told me that they were shooting a Sprite commercial up there. And I said, well, I want to go up there and I want to see what it's like, how they shoot up there. So I went up to the West Court, which is right outside the grand entry, to the West Courtyard. And once I walked up there, a guy ran out of the house swearing, F this, F it, and ran. And I was like, what was that about? And went up to the ranger, who became a very good friend of mine, and said, what's going on here? And what had taken place was, this was probably in 98 or so, 1998. And when they did filming up at Graystone, they were really horrible about taking care of the location. So it was a historical location, but they didn't treat it as such. And so they go in there, they paint the walls and they're not supposed to. They drill into the wood, not supposed to. Throw things down on the marble, not supposed to. And it was just this one guy, Steve Clark, who was the only ranger there. And he was like, he couldn't control it. So I think the spirits within the home were pissed off. And there was a guy upstairs wrapping up cable, throwing it into a crate. And while he was doing that, this crate moved across the floor in front of him. And that was it for him. He snapped and ran out and said, F this place. What the hell's going on? And he ran, he was gone, never came back. And I went, uh-oh, something's up with this place. That was my first time.
How big is Greystone? How many rooms?
It's 46,000 square feet.
Wow.
It's huge. 46,000 square feet, which is 55 rooms, 67 altogether, meaning walk-in closets and areas like that. So it is enormous. And it's built like a fortress as well. So it's mostly all cement, and then fronted, and you'll understand from this, it's fronted by Indiana limestone.
Oh, boy.
Right, there you go. So limestone covers the whole building, which, as you know, is an energy conductor. And so I think that's why a lot of it is active, because of holding in that energy in the limestone throughout the building.
I can believe that. I can understand that.
Yeah.
So what's some of the history about it? I was looking through the book you guys sent me, and it's very interesting when you read about the history within and the stuff that went around, around it.
Yeah. So it was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Edward Lawrence Doheny came from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, came out to LA to look for gold at that time. Didn't find gold, but what he did find is he heard that there was oil within the area of downtown through a whole situation that took place. And once he found that out, he and his friend Charles Canfield went and bought a small little plot of land. And I mean a small little area of land near Alvarado and Wilshire out here. And they decided they were going to try to find oil. So they took a shovel and a pick by hand and started digging on this property. It was a 7 by 10 foot hole that they started digging, and they dug 155 feet. Now imagine this. That's 15 stories down by hand. They got to 15 stories down, still didn't hit oil, decided they had to get a better way. So they went out and they found a eucalyptus tree. This is so crazy. A eucalyptus tree, as straight as they could find. They took the end of that eucalyptus tree and carved out, in essence, like a drill bit end. Lowered that down into the hole. And I'm guessing used like ropes and mules to turn it, and they went down 460 feet, 46 stories down, and they hit oil. And they brought out 7 barrels a day. Then it went up to 40 barrels a day, where they started making money. And then he took some of that money, went down to Tampico, Mexico, and bought a huge plot of land down there. And he hit a 600-foot geyser, which is still one of the largest today. And with that became a billionaire overnight when a penny meant something, and came back and bought a bunch of acreage along with 420 acres, which became Beverly Hills and then Truesdale Estates later on. But within that 429 acres, he gave his son Ned, who had a wife, Lucy, and a daughter, Lucy, and 4 boys, a 12.5 acre parcel of land. And that's where they built Greystone. His son Ned built Greystone there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Pretty
there's
crazy.
go ahead. And there's tragedy hooked into the property, right?
Well, here's it's a good question. There is tragedy once. So they started building the property in 1927. It was February 15th in 1927.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this. So by September of 1928, the family could move into that mansion. Now think about that. That's a year.
That's huge. That's
It's
fast.
incredible. Imagine how many people they used to
For
build this
something that big. Wow.
that quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in September of 1928, Ned, his wife, and the 6 kids, they moved into the house. And February 16th of 1929, he died in the house. So he was only there 4 months, and the tragedy took place. So it was a murder-suicide that took place. And so from that time on, then his wife lived there until 1955. But we don't know, by the way, we don't know if were there spirits there that possibly caused a murder-suicide that pushed them to that? Or did the murder-suicide that took place, did that happen and open a portal within the home, because there is a portal in that home, and allow spirits to come in and then start to affect everybody else throughout the years, and other suicides and murders that took place within that home?
How many other, again, like you just mentioned, the suicides and murders, how many have occurred that are known of?
Well, so you have the murder-suicide of Ned and his secretary, Hugh.
Right.
There was a little girl that died there. We've seen her probably 5 times as an apparition, solid 5 times. So she's there. There have been Lucy, the wife. She's been seen inside that mansion 4 or 5 times as well. I know for a fact that Ned and Hugh are still in there. I recorded their voices in there, so they're there. There is another man that in 2003 committed suicide by the willow pond that's there. He just took a gun and shot himself in the head there, and I was there that day. And there also, it goes on and on, there are also 2 women maids that work there, committed suicide within the home. And then there was another murder within the home of a triangle between 2 male workers and a female worker that worked at that location, and the female was strangled to death.
Oh, that's crazy.
Is it nuts? I mean,
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's too many to be coincidental.
Yeah, I agree. That's why it's just, we were, to be there. That's why it's so active. It's just crazy active. So,
what kind of stuff goes on?
Well, everything that you would think when you watch the shows, Ghost Adventures, or in all those ghost shows, that's what takes place at this mansion. There have been apparitions, people being touched. Someone was pushed down the stairs and almost died. There are voices, gunshots. which I think are residual from that evening of the murder-suicide. And like I say, apparitions, full body apparitions, and noises, just doors closing, all that, everything you could think of. I don't know of anything paranormal that really hasn't happened. Black shadows, dark shadows, shadow people, which are bad. Other white shadows that are there as well, and tugging on someone's hair, and it's happened inside the mansion. It's happened outside the mansion as well, but on that property.
And how long? I know you started working there. So how long before you started actually looking into the stuff that was going on?
Well, once I was there, and I was like a month into it, then the Sprite commercial thing took place, and then after that, my friend Steve Clark, who became the senior ranger there, he told me of a story, took me aside and said, "You're not going to believe this." And I go, "What's the deal?" And he said, "I ended up closing up the mansion. I had everything. I had the mansion armed. Everything was closed. All the windows. You walked out, and he sees a window that's open in the main courtyard, in the servants' wing. And he looks up there, and the window's open out to the courtyard. And he's like, I thought I had everything closed." And goes back in, takes the alarm off, goes in the house. You close that window, and then you shut it like that. So it's a two-thing process. You crank the window shut, then you lock it. And then he did that, went through the rest of the house to see what else he missed, came down to the grand entry, turned on the alarm, walked out, and that window was open again. And he said, then I knew something was up. And this poor guy, so he told me that about that location, and then I knew, okay, there's something up with this place. But Steve Clark, who is pretty prominent in the book because he has the gift, he can feel things, he has seen things, and I believe that once you have that gift, they can see from the other side. They can see an aura. They know that you have the ability to connect with them, so they're going to try to connect with you, whether you like it or not. And this poor guy was tortured throughout his whole career, which is 20 years as well.
I believe that. I think once you open that door, it takes training. It takes training to learn how to control the gift. And if you don't get that training, it could really overwhelm you.
Yeah, it did him for sure. You're absolutely right. He was, and there are others that I've interviewed or who still work there today that are overwhelmed but have to work. That's their job, so they'll have to close up at night. Now we've had COVID, so it's been relatively quiet in a way where we don't have events going on within the mansion where they have to close up. But we've had renovation there. There's a theater there that was obviously built in 27 that had water damage up above. It was pretty, because AFI came in. It was their campus for a while from 69 to 82. And so they had free run of the mansion, and they tore things up, tore walls out, some horrible things, but it wasn't historical then, right? So they did whatever they wanted to. And then once they left and years had gone by, the house was in disrepair. And so the city recently decided, let's go in and start fixing up Greystone. And they put a lot of money into the theater and redid it. Well, that's renovation. And I know that you know.
Yeah.
Right? Once you start renovation on any location that's already has activity, it ramps up that activity because you're changing their environment. It's like if somebody came into your house and started putting up a wall somewhere, you're like, what the hell are these guys doing? And I'd stop. I don't want that wall there. That's how they feel. So you're in their location, renovating this theater that they've been used to since 27. And it ramped up the activity. And so the construction workers who have no idea about this location, they're there to check the electrical. They're there to put up new walls, change the ceiling, and suddenly things are happening to them. And so that took place. Now they're redoing the library. And I already know, prior to my leaving, I talked to some of the guys there and said, Chance, do you know if anything weird has happened? They go, yeah, what is with this place? I go, well, I hate to tell them it's haunted because then some people won't come back, and that we had that too. So I said, there's activity. But tell me what happened. And they told me. I'm like, oh my God, it never ends. It just keeps going.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I can understand though, especially with the renovations. The original owners that's designed the building aren't very happy.
Right.
Know?
Yeah, I agree.
That's why there's a lot of reports. Ghost hunting, as long as I have, of ghosts that seemingly go through walls, and what people don't realize is they're actually not going through a wall. It's usually because there was a doorway there at some point. And I've known psychics that I've worked with in older hotels, different locations like that, where there have been renovations where the psychics have walked right into walls because they see it as it was,
Oh,
They've walked right in. Boom.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
So all this was going on while you were working there. What about the guests there? Because you said that there were events put on. Did people, who were involved in those events notice stuff going on, like the weddings or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, we would do events such as a design show. So we would have, let's say, a major company, designing company, would come in, and their designers would buy a room, and so they would purchase that room to design, and everybody would do their designs, and then we'd open up to the public who buys a ticket, comes in, they can look at the design, see if they want that designer in their home or buy something that they have in their room. And so you're opening up, people coming in all day, and there were people being touched. Definitely had somebody being talked. They talked to me for the book and said, I had somebody touch me, and they were talking to me, and it scared them. It really, especially if you're walking into a trap because you don't know it's haunted.
Right.
So they're just coming in to see some really cool, furniture and stuff, and all of a sudden they're going, what do you got? They don't know what's going to happen. It scares them. It scares them a lot. And so we did events like that. We did docent tours. People were being touched and talked to on the tours. I did a lot of tours in 20 years, but my main thing was to find people on the property that didn't come there for a tour, especially if they're out of town. So I had a couple from Australia that came in, and 2 girls that came from Norway, and it was on their bucket list. They just wanted to see it. And I said, the Australian couple, he was really excited that, I'm not sure, did you see the film There Will Be Blood?
Yes.
Okay, so the bowling alley scene at the very end of the film is Greystone, right?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so this Australian husband and wife and daughter and son, they were there too, because he goes, oh my God, I can't believe it. That's what they shot, There'll Be Blood here. He was really excited. And I heard him say that. And I said, hey man, how you doing? He goes, oh, I'm good. We're really excited. I said, you want to go see it? Really? Yeah, come on. I took him in, showed him that. And I said, they were so excited. I said, well, we're not done. And I gave him a full tour. And by the time it was a 2-hour tour. I got him back to the front grand entry, started telling him a story about one of the rangers there who was touched. And I said, well, that's it. And I opened the door, and the daughter got out quickly. Everybody left. And then later on, about 20 minutes later, when I was getting ready to leave for the day, I see the mother talking to one of the other rangers. I said, hey, what's going on? She goes, I was just telling him that my daughter was touched on your tour. And I said, where is she? Is she okay? She's kind of worked up. I said, where is she? Let me go talk to her. And I went up and talked to her. And when I was telling them about the ranger being touched at that grand entry, when he was trying to get out and the door was locked, and the spirits would not let him out of the house. And then he felt this hand come down on his neck to his shoulder, and he just panicked and kicked that door open and went outside like, what the hell was that? When I was doing that, performing that for them, she was being touched on her neck, the daughter. That's why when I opened the door, she was gone. And I went like, okay, that was interesting. So it has happened, whether it be my tour or events taking place there, people have been touched or seen things or been talked to as well.
Has there been any real, I know being touched for people that aren't expecting it's scary, but have there been any real malevolent stuff that's gone on?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is before I started working, and it's an interesting story because I heard my buddy Steve and myself, we heard about this story, and we thought it was like, Ranger folklore, and it was just passed down because people were trying to make it exciting and this and that. Until this guy showed up. I wasn't there. Steve was there. He showed up one day and said, "Hey, I used to work here a long time ago. Is it okay if I bring my son and my daughter in there?" Steve says, "Well, we usually don't," because I was there the day that the girl was pushed down the stairs. Steve like, "What? That's true?" He goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, "Come on, let's go inside." And brought him inside, and he told Steve exactly what took place. And he was walking with another ranger. They were coming down the stairs that when you walk into the grand entry to the right, by the way, there are maps in the book, so you can actually see the whole location, 4 separate maps. So, if you get lost on any of the chapters, you can go, "Oh, let me look up the map. Oh, I see where they are." And you'll see it's the second floor landing and what have you. And he told us about, he and this girl were walking down the stairs, both rangers, and she flew away from him and down the stairs. Now she could have died. It was bad. And she rolled and hit. He helped her up, got her out of the house. She went and filed with the police department, and within days she was gone. She didn't die. She left the job. But I wanted to interview him about this, and he wouldn't talk to me. He's now a DA in a county out here in Los Angeles, and he won't talk about that incident. He talked to Steve, but he won't go on record as saying exactly what happened. And you would know this more than me. It's like people, because it's paranormal, they don't want to be aligned with, like, they're nutty or it's not real or something. I mean, that has to be the case, isn't it?
Yeah, that's usually the case.
Yeah.
That's usually the case.
Yeah.
So, when you decided to start to investigate this, how did you go about approaching your bosses, or how did you do that?
Yeah. So the beginning of this whole thing was, I knew eventually I was going to retire. I was getting close to the age where I wanted to retire. I'd been there a long time. I'd done a lot of stuff, a lot of events. And I just thought, what, I want to, eventually I write a lot of films. And so I thought, I think what I'll do is I'm just going to write down some stories, and I'll remember those stories just for me, just so I have it. And then before I went to bed one night, I literally prayed and said, what am I supposed to do once I retire? I don't know what I'm going to do. And I went to bed, and I woke up at 3 a.m, dead time, kind of. And I immediately went, I got to write a book about my tour, what I say in my tour. I went, wow, that's kind of weird. How did I come up with that? So I just decided what I'll do is I'll write my notes down, but then I have to talk to Steve because he had some things. But then he says, well, you better talk to, it ended up to be 86 different people that I interviewed over a period of 3 years that all had different stories. Some dovetailed. So I saw this, and another guy that didn't know this guy, I saw that too, which is pretty great, because then it really corroborates each person's story. And it became over 300 stories, in which it became a 700-page book. And our editor called me up and said, can't do it. You can't do a 700-page book. So I went in and I cut 50 stories out, and now it's a 520-page book. But that's how it happened. It just kept snowballing into somebody else. Oh, in fact, there's a woman in there who was a ranger back in the 90s. I talked her into coming back to Greystone so that she could feel things again, because she said, I had things happen to me. When I brought her back and we took our walk, and I said, you show me, you take me where you had things happen. We started at the grand entry, and by the time we finished, she had 18 stories of her time there at Graystone, which were off the charts awesome, really amazing stories. So that's how it became a snowball effect.
Wow. And did you go in with teams, like mine, doing EVP sessions and stuff like that?
Yeah, I did. And there's a guy named Rob Ledarsky. I don't know if you know Rob.
Mm-hmm.
quite well known in LA. He's done a lot of stuff, Queen Mary, all over. I did probably 4 investigations with Rob. Ranger Steve met Rob one day at the site, and Rob said, I just love to come in and look. And Steve said, he goes, I'm an investigator. And Steve said, okay, I'm locking up, but just come in for now. Come on in. Brought him in. And on that time that he brought Rob in, they were standing on a landing in the wreck wing, and they looked up, and this guy was coming down the stairs. No legs, floating, solid. And Steve looked up and said, oh my God, look at the guy in the white jacket. Looked like a server's jacket. And Rob said, with the blue stripes, it was like blue piping on the jacket. And so, which meant they saw the same thing. And it floated down the staircase and down into the bowling alley. So there's that type of thing. I mean, it was amazing how many people that showed up that I got inside the mansion really jogged their memory and allowed them to go, oh, you're not going to believe this. So I'm not sure that answered your question, but it's pretty phenomenal that you can have that many people at one location. I think that's what's kind of cool about the book, is that it's not a collection of ghost stories from all over. It's
Right.
there. And one other thing is, Chris Fleming, who is an investigator, medium, he showed up one day. We became friends, and he showed up, and I brought him through. And that day changed my thoughts about that house, because it was 11 o'clock in the day and things started happening because he was there. So that was pretty amazing. We did investigation with him, and that was kind of amazing. And I've done hundreds of recordings within the home. Put my recorder in there at night and got from gunshots to slamming doors to conversations to everything. So, and never did I have one night that I didn't get anything. It's always active.
What do the ghosts say?
Well, like Steve, we had the Prince and Princess of Monaco had an event there one night. And this is just an example. And they finished, got them out like between 10 and 12 at night. They left. Everybody was gone except Steve was closing up. Poor Steve, right? He's closing up, and he starts to leave, and he goes, he forgot his lunch bag that he brought, and he had to set it up for the next day. And this was like 1 o'clock at night. So he went in through the servant's door to go get his lunchbox. And when he walked in there, he hears 2 spirits, 2 people. He thought it was 2 people inside the house in the dark talking to each other. And he froze, and he's like, what am I hearing? Oh my God, there are 2 people in the house. So he went back to his truck, got his flashlight, came back in, and was as quiet as he could be. When he walked back in, one of those guys was singing. And I asked him, well, what was he singing? He goes, it sounded like a song from the 20s, an old, crooner song from the 20s. It's like, you're kidding. So he called the police, Steve did. And the police showed up. He goes, I swear to God, I got 2 people inside the house. And the police said, okay, we'll go in, we'll start looking. The police walk in with Steve. The house is completely dark. And the cop turns to Steve and says, just recently, no, like 10 minutes ago, they were talking to each other. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, why would they be talking in the dark? And Steve goes, I'm just telling you. And then he started singing. And go, okay. They went through the whole house, found nothing, and came back out. Steve said, I swear to God. They go, okay, whatever. So it's from chatting with each other, singing. I've heard screams. Like there's a Steve also had a thing happen to him down the basement where he went down to close up one night, and he heard this scream growl that scared him to his core. And when I brought him back to Graystone, I put him down by that basement again and said, tell me the story. The fear in his eyes, when he started to tell me that story of the sound that he heard, which is a scream growl. He said it wasn't human, it wasn't animal. It's like a mixture. And then he said he had the guts to stay there and say, if that's you, do that again. And it screamed even louder. And he ran out and told these people who were taking photos for a design show to get out, just run. So there's that screaming, a little girl yelling, and chatting, regular chatting, just off in the distance.
Well, it's obvious that it's not residual because they are kind of interacting with you guys. You know, when you ask them to do stuff. Have you ever had one answer you directly, vocally, where you ask a question and they talk back?
Yeah. And the craziest thing was, I bought a spirit box. This was, I don't know how many years ago, when the spirit boxes came out. I was going like, I see it on Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters. I'm going like, is this real? I'll get one anyway. So I buy one, and I'm with my friend, another senior ranger, Dan, and I say, let's go in and let's just try this thing. Here's the recorder. You hold the recorder. I'll try to get this thing going and see what this does. And so I gave him also a K2 meter, and it went all the way to red. I'm going, whoa! I said, stand away from that light switch. See if put it by there. Puts it by there. It doesn't have to go. Stand away. I go, dude, we've got somebody here. I didn't know what I was saying. I was just joking with him. We walked into the living room. It was pitch dark at night. And I turned on the spirit box, and I said, if somebody's in here, would you come to this red light, please, and talk to me? Is there anybody in here with us? And you know the white noise sound it makes, and through it goes, Ned. And Ned was the name of the father of that, who was murdered that night. And then I look at Dan, and I go, was that Ned? He goes, I think so. I go, Ned, thank you. If that was you, would you do that again, please? Different voice, Hugh. And that was the other guy who was murdered in the house. So that's a direct response.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, that was incredible.
So how do you feel? I mean, you've retired and you're essentially stepping away from it. Are you going to be able to stay away from it, or are you going to keep going back?
That's a good question, because I just had one of the other senior rangers today contacted me today. They're all my friends. And the reason it's mostly a lot of the rangers, because they have access to the building.
Right.
Public doesn't have access unless there's an event. It's closed now. So the only people going in there are either guys working on construction, working on the library, or the rangers. And he got a hold of me today and says, hey, you know, I think things are happening again. Is it okay if I contact you? We talk about it. I said, absolutely, because they're scared, but they know I've done a lot of research, a lot of reading up and my own research on all this stuff. And things are still happening. They're still calling me. Last week, one of the rangers went in there and said they're inside the house making sure they're closing up for the day. And one of the doors, there's no air conditioning, nothing. The doors, bam, and slammed on them, scared the hell out of them. They came out to me. Before I retired, I was like a day or so before, I was like, we got to talk to you. I go, okay, relax. Just tell me what happened. And they're telling me that things are still active in there. So it's hard for me not to interview them and write things down and say, I'm going to do another book. But the book took 3 years to make. And I think I'm done with that. I'll always be involved, but I'm not going to write another book.
Do you think that the ghosts in that house, obviously they're talking back to you guys, you know, because they're aware, but do you think they're really aware of what they're doing? Like when they're slamming the doors, is it with intent to scare you guys, or is it just them moving around the house doing their own thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because I've had some of the people that I've interviewed, they literally saw like servants who were there, you know, who were not there, but that they could see them moving through places. Orbs flying from one room, the breakfast room, into the kitchen. Breakfast room, like it was a servant there. I think some of it is like you said. I think some of it's residual, but I also think it's their way of saying either get out of the house, trying to scare us out, or hey, I'm here. I want you to know I'm here. We walked into the kitchen, the store kitchen one night. It was myself and 3 other guys. and a voice says, hello, with an echo. We're in a house that has no furniture, so it's a big home, and it echoes. And this voice echoed along with our voices that were echoing within the kitchen. So some want to connect and just say, hello, I'm here.
Mhm.
Others are slamming things like, why don't you get out? So I think
Right.
it's both. Yeah.
Sounds like a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ever scared when you're in there?
Yeah. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I would get there really early, especially the last month or so. I get there by 5:30 in the morning. It's completely dark. And I have to go in and open up the West Court, get the gate open, go in, turn the alarm off, get it ready for the day. And I get there, and every night before I go, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to turn everything on. I'm going to stand there and say, hey, just try to talk. I get there, I drive up, and unless you've been to Graystone at night or early morning when it's dark, you don't understand the vibe that's there. And so I would drive up every morning, and I'd look at the mansion. I'd just go, hell no, I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. I didn't want to go in there. I just drive around and let the other rangers go in, and they would open up in the morning. So I do get scared. It is a freaky, scary place.
Well, I can tell you from experience, I worked in older areas of Sacramento, like warehouses. And I don't know what it is about where they put alarms as opposed to where the exit door is, but the alarm is always at the other end of the hall, no matter what. And I know, because just you can just feel when there's something in there that you're just not comfortable with.
Right.
And
yeah.
There's nights where I would set that alarm and run like hell to get to the back door. And then you hope to God you did everything right because you don't want to go back in.
And you know that having interviewed all these people with 300 stories, I know every story that takes place around that alarm pad. So when I go to that front door, I know what I'm walking into. And that's part of the problem. If I didn't know those stories, like some of the new guys who are starting to work there, they don't know. They're like, hey, man, they'll get theirs at some point. It'll happen. But for me, when I go up to that front door and I have to open up, I'm like, well, boy, I hope this is cool. Open it up. Hi there. It's Clete. I'm here. It's okay, man. I'm just going to unarm this and I'm going to leave you alone. And I just get out as fast as I can.
I bet I can understand that. I can understand that completely. Because like I said, I've worked in places like that, where there's stuff there.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to get your job done, get the hell out, get the hell in, do whatever you have to do to get to the day without something, reaching out to you or whatever.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So you worked there all these years, and what do you think for you personally was one of the more scarier experiences that you had?
Well, I having worked there, I only really had one thing that happened to me, physically happened to me. Okay. All the other things were hearing my friends or running in because Juan, one of the senior rangers, texted me and said, something's up. He has the gift too. And he's going like, I can't stay in here. The vibe is too strong for me. And I go, hang on, I'm coming in. Then I would go and see him, calm him down. I'm not feeling anything. He is. So there was that a lot. But for my experience was being down in the basement. Steve Clark, Ranger Clark, was giving my sister and her husband, who came in from Hawaii, a tour. Mm-hmm. I had work to do, and I said, I'll meet you, and I'll get there as soon as I can. I met them and went down the basement, standing there, and Steve's talking about the boiler that's there. It's like a horror movie down in the basement in this one area. It's so creepy. So I'm standing there listening to him talk to my sister and brother-in-law, and I hear these 3 bangs right behind me. And I look back, and it's like a cement wall with water heaters there and stuff like that. So but it sounds like almost like it's on wood, and it's bam, bam, bam. And it scared me enough to look back, and I look at Steve, I go, what was that? And he goes, I don't know. Things always happen to Steve, right? He goes, I don't know. And I go, well, who did that? He goes, why are you asking? How would I know? I mean, you've always wanted something to happen. It just happened. And now you're acting like it didn't happen. Like we did something. I go, get Dan on the radio. the other ranger who was a buddy of mine and his. Where is he? Because I thought he was doing a bit. Gets down the radio, he's at another park. And then I just looked at Steve and said, let's get the hell out of here. My sister was there, and I was holding her out as bait. I was just like holding on, saying like, who was it? She goes, what are you doing? I panicked. It was crazy. So we got out of the basement, and that's the only thing that really ever happened to me in that regard, as opposed to leaving a recorder and then listening to the recorder the next day and hearing horrifying things that I caught on radio, on my recorder. So that was the only physical thing that happened to me.
Interesting. And then there would be, it would be really scary to hear the gunshots. That would freak me out. On the recorder like that.
Yeah, man. And I'll tell you, it, again, echo, a sound echo to it. And it wasn't just one gunshot. Like let's say on one night, it's long echo, loud, really loud. I'm like, oh my God, how is that even possible? There's nobody in the house, alarms on, all that stuff, huge echo. And then a month or so later, another gunshot that's not as loud, but is pretty good. That you go, so it's not just a residual of that one sound. There are different gunshot sounds throughout the house. And it has to be residual from that evening when the gunshots went off. What else would it be? So, and another thing also is that they've done a play inside that mansion called The Manor, based on the Doheny family, and it's not set like exactly what took place that night. They've made it more of a play so that it's got more of a story background to it. But there at the end of that play, there's a gunshot on the stairs, and one of the guys, the owner of the home, is killed. So it kind of runs along the same lines. But the gunshot is, they use the prop guns, and it's not even close to when I played that gunshot to a guy who was at the mansion just visiting, who happened to be a weapons expert. And he's like, that's a 38. I went, oh, okay. He goes, no, that's a handgun, 38 handgun. I went, oh, okay. The thing that they use, like a 22 with a little cap in it, right, for the play. So it's not from that. It's not from the play. I truly believe it was from the evening of the gunshot.
Right, it probably is.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask you about that. Is Hollywood aware of the legend in that house?
They are.
Like the studios?
Yeah. And we had, I'm not sure this is really Hollywood, but we had ghost hunters, and a bunch of the shows reached out to us. Can we come in and shoot there? And the answer from the city was no. Yeah. We don't want anybody. Plus, at that time, Patrick was still alive. He was one of the sons. He was in his 90s, but he was still alive. And they go, the immediate family member's still alive. We don't want to do it. Not while he's still alive. He has since passed, but they're still reticent about bringing a company in, and they will not allow filming overnight inside the mansion. They've only done it once, and that was there was a psychic named Lisa Williams. She's out of Britain. Lisa Williams, Life Among the Dead. And she got to shoot overnight in the house to feel what was going on in the house, because Merv Griffin at that time lived in Beverly Hills. He was a billionaire, paid a lot of taxes, and he went to city council and says, I want my show to be able to shoot one night, small crew, overnight. And the council said, of course. So they let him do it just the one night. And I was there that night with Lisa, and she was great. She picked up on a lot of stuff and felt a lot of things within that home. And but everybody else, you shoot, red lights at 10 o'clock. Everybody's driving out of the place by 10 o'clock. You can't shoot past that. So they've clamped down on that. And, I was taking a chance, really, of putting this out there, because now everybody's going to know what actually happens and has happened in this mansion. And the city, they didn't, when I first started working there, you didn't talk about it. You didn't talk about the murder-suicide. You never mentioned it. If anybody asks you, say, well, I don't know anything about that. But then it became a thing of my working there, people would come up to me and they'd ask me two things. They'd say, are there ghosts in the mansion? That was number one. The other thing, where are the restrooms? I mean, those are the only two things they ever had. Not like, how's the architecture and all. It was about those two things. And I would have to say, the ghosts, I don't know. And because if they found out I said something about that, they'd come down on you and say, this is a location where we're doing events. We're making money on that. And so this is not a place to talk about something like that. And so we kept to that. And over the years, it's loosened up a little bit because everybody knows it's on the internet.
Right.
Everybody knows about it. Photos are on the internet. So it's now to the point where I just thought, I'm going to tell everything. I'll write this and I'm just going to tell the truth about what goes on within that house, what has gone on and what is still going on.
Hey, has there been any objects or anything?
Yeah. I mean, especially during the design show. Remember, I mean, you'd have designers coming in, really well-known designers come in and buy these rooms, and they would put really expensive stuff, furniture, paintings, statues within these rooms to make them look really great. And we had a statue. There is a woman, she's not passed, a woman named Lisa Turner, who did the card room, and it was for Stevie Wonder. It was, I think it was like icons of the industry. Mm-hmm. And she chose Stevie Wonder. And so within that room were these two statues of African-American women in like these leather masks with paint, and off the leather were holes that had string hanging with hollowed out rocks that looked like dresses. And they were placed between these doors. The card room has all these leaded glass doors that open like French doors. So in between that are walls. She placed them within those walls there. It looked beautiful. And Steve Clark came in one morning. Poor Steve, he came in, opened up, was turning on the lights, walked past that room, and he looked over out at the sunrise that was coming up. It's really beautiful off the terrace. And he looked over and he's like, the statue moves toward him, moved like 3 feet, slid toward him. And he's like, yeah, think about that. He stops, he's by himself. And he said to me, you just moved. And he took a photo of it, got a hold of me. We talked about it. Lisa showed up that day. Steve didn't have a chance to talk to her. She walked in, she looked over and said, who moved my statue? And then we had to say, I'll have to tell you what happened. And we told her what happened. And so that happened. Things being shoved off tables. There was one time in that same card room, different show, mirrors hanging on the wall with wire. Mirrors hanging on the wall. And we go in the next day, they're on the ground, on the floor, crushed. Just splattered the glass all over the place, the mirror. And we look at it, the nails are still in the wall. The wire is cut. So how does that happen? I don't know. So it was things like that kept happening during the design show. Every time we had a show, it was like, let's see what happens. Hopefully this one doesn't have too much damage, you know?
You said there was a portal in there. Who determined there's a portal in there? One of the visiting psychics, Chris Fleming, or? Yeah,
good question. Probably 12 to 15 years ago, there was a psychic. I don't know if you remember the psychic. His name was Peter James.
Right.
He was a very famous psychic. He showed up one day with a couple friends and asked if he could go inside. He'd heard about Graystone. So Steve Clark said, well, I'll let you come inside, but I don't want any cameras because nobody's supposed to even be in here. And he said, okay. He walked in there. And when he walked in, he looked up to the corner up above on the second floor landing and said, are you aware you have a portal here? And Steve said, no. He goes, right there. 10, 12 years later, Chris Fleming walks in with me. And he walks in and stops and goes, "Are you aware you have a portal in here?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Right up there." He pointed exactly where Peter James pointed. And I said to Chris, Peter James said the same thing. He goes, "He was my mentor. He taught me everything I know." Like, well, you're bang on, because he said the exact same place is in that corner.
Interesting. The other question I have too is with all these psychics coming through, has anybody tried to do any soul rescues or anything for Ned or anybody that had died tragically in there?
No, and we've never really had a psychic come in that we asked them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is me, where I did say to Emily, we think her name is Emily, the little girl in the house. I did say to her one time, I used the flashlight thing where you turn it off, or the mag light, you barely turn it off and set it there.
Right.
It was astounding. And I did it through a camera. I was in my apartment here in Santa Monica, and I was talking to her through a camera that was placed inside the second floor landing in the mansion.
That's
and I
cool.
was talking to her. And she started turning on the light and went, "Oh my God, this is actually happening." So I was asking questions, say, "Emily, turn on the light. Do you have friends in the house?" Light would come on like that. Okay, could you turn that off for me, please? You got to turn it to keep it. Boom, it's off. Perfect. Honey, do you want me to get you out of there? Do you want me to find someone to help you get out? Nothing. She wouldn't turn the light on. I asked another question, the light came on. So I knew that was her choice. Now, is it her choice because she's scared to move on? Does she think she's going to find her parents there? She was only like, I think, 11. So I also asked somebody, a spirit, I walked into our break room, which is where a woman hung herself, oddly enough. And I walked into our break room one morning by myself with my cell phone and turned it on and said, "Why are you still here? We know that you're in the house and you're here. Why are you still here? Is it because you're afraid to find out what will happen to you when you cross to the other side?" Click, shut it off, played it back, cross the other side. Yes. So what took place, I think, in that mansion, be it the murders, the murder-suicide, be it the suicides themselves, it was a Catholic household. So these are sins. Are these spirits afraid to cross because they think they'll be going to hell, or they're going to meet their maker who's going to, reprimand them and send them to hell or something? I don't know. It's really sad to me, because my feeling is that they're going to judge themselves. That's what's going to happen. They're not going to, that's how I believe.
I've actually run into stuff like that. The Woodland Opera House out here is interesting in that the guy that burned down the Opera House by accident ended up killing a fireman who got trapped in there. And the issue is he doesn't cross over because the fireman wants to torment him and keep him there. And so we actually got it via EVP, some of those answers with that, plus for one of the team psychics who said that, that it wasn't a case of him being afraid to cross over. The fireman was there to torment him. That was his hell, technically.
Wow.
To be there all the time at that opera house. So I think it does happen. I think they feel guilt. They're afraid to cross over, or there's another entity that's angry at them and is keeping them there.
That makes total sense to me. That's how I felt. That's what was going on inside the mansion.
Yeah. So that stuff does make sense. I've seen some films. I was thinking while you were talking to me about it, I've seen some films that could loosely be based on that place. In fact, one that came to mind was the thing I saw that was made in the 70s back with Linda What's-Her-Face from The Exorcist. That was called Hell House.
Oh. Now, you think it was based on Greystone?
I think, the more I read about Graystone, I think it was loosely based on Graystone.
It could be.
Because of the story they told. The only thing they twisted in there, they talked about the guy that shot himself and shot other people in the house. But the twist was of course, they had a deformed son, blah blah blah, and that was the perpetrator. But I mean, it took place in this manor, and it was this manor that the kids would go to do their college initiations in, where they had to stay the night out there.
Yeah.
And they had rigged all these tricks, in there to scare people and whatnot. But then it turns out that the deformed son was still alive.
Wow.
But
I was never into the paranormal. I mean, that wasn't my thing,
Yeah.
I did a lot of stuff and did a lot of acting and wrote some films and this and that, but I was never into the paranormal until I started working there. And then suddenly it was like all these movies were out there. I was going like, holy, it's like that's what it's all about now is the paranormal.
Well, I think that's a lot of the case of people. They don't get into it and they don't believe in it until it actually happens to them. And then once it happens to them, you get more and more curious. It's like a drug. It is, because just you get more and more curious and you want to look into it more and you want to hear the voices. You want to see things. So yeah. So it's like taking cocaine or something.
Yeah,
that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I felt that when I was doing the interviews. I was like, who can I get next?
Yeah.
This is crazy. And then they'd say, you might want to talk to Robert. I go, okay, well, do you have his number? I get the number. And hey, Robert, my name is Clete. I work at and then story after story after story. You're right. You're bang on. It's like I couldn't wait for the next person to call me or that I could contact and say, tell me your story. I want to know what happened to you.
And then it's really neat. Like you said, you interviewed all these people. And like you say, one story related to another story, or one story was almost the same as another story, or stuff like that happens too.
Yeah.
Where it starts to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You're able to put the thing together.
Yeah, and a lot of those stories dovetail other people's stories. That's what I love about it. So there was a story of a guy who worked there and worked out of what's now the firehouse upstairs, which was one of my offices before I left. And they would bring, they had what's called Catskills there, that they had a kids' camp, and the kids would be up on this landing up there, painting and drawing and all that stuff. Their offices were right there behind them in the doors. And he told the story of coming out and start looking over and seeing a little girl on the rooftop of the recreation wing. Now, this is like 8 in the morning and nobody's in the park. The parents shouldn't have dropped off any kids. And he's looking at this little girl in a white dress going like, what are you doing here? Why? How did you get on the roof? Where are your parents? Hang on. Okay. And as he starts to walk down the stairs and looks back at her, she slides right off the roof down into the courtyard. And he panicked and thought she died and all that stuff, ran in there. There's no little girl. And I heard that. And then he tells me, talk to this other woman. I call her and she tells the same kind of story, except these little kids were out there painting, doing the crayon thing. And she's in the other room and she hears screams. And she said, I was a lifeguard. I know what a panic scream sounds like. And I ran out there thinking, oh my God, what's going on? And they were just pointing. It was like a horror movie. They're just pointing at the roof across the way. And she goes, what is it? What is it? And this little girl jumped off the roof. She's like, what? And she goes down there and there's nobody there. So that corroborated Glenn's story. So those things are like gold to me, because then it's not, because a lot of people, I'm sure, as you know, when you investigate and you interview people, there's always a justification. Well, this happened to me, but it's probably because, or, I saw that, but it probably wasn't because, and it's always a justification because it's so crazy. It's hard for your brain to wrap itself around what you've seen. And so they come up with a justification for it. Well, when you get two people had the same thing in different years or whatever, then you go, it was real.
You kind of answered my next question, because I was thinking of kids. What have kids seen in that mansion? Because kids are a lot more sensitive than we are.
Oh yeah. We don't get a lot of children in the mansion because we don't really allow children in the mansion unless it's for the like music in the mansion. They're sitting with their parents, so they just sit. They keep them quiet, so they don't scream during a piano recital. But there have been kids on the property that have seen spirits, have seen apparitions. Like I said, the kids looking across and seeing this little girl on the rooftop. but not a lot because we don't really have them, especially at night when the majority of activity is at night. So there have been some things during the day, but mostly at night. So we don't really have too many kids there at night. So, yeah.
This has been fascinating, absolutely fascinating to learn about this place. Because I've heard about it off and on over the years, but I've never really read your book, which I obviously read your book, but you know what I mean, where I've never really looked really into it.
Yeah.
And it's just absolutely incredible. And like you say, it's not open. Do you know of any? Did you think they're going to be reopening it at all, or is it just stay shut down for now?
Yeah, they'll reopen it. I mean, listen, we have offers for weddings every weekend, right? So when it's open, there's usually, unless it's a December, January, February that we start maybe a little bit, there's a wedding every weekend, wedding photo shoots, events within now the theater and the house, and sometimes filming as well. So I believe that I'm guessing with vaccine, if that works out, I'm guessing like maybe April, May, something like that, March, April, May, in that area, they'll start opening it up. And right now it is closed. So if you try to get in there, they'll turn you around, which is what I used to do. So, but they'll start opening it up, I think, like in the spring, maybe when it's safe.
Fascinating. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate having you on. And if you could tell us about your website and where to get your book, that would be great.
Yeah, it's at www.ghostsofgreystone.com, and you can get it from us there. It's free shipping, just like Amazon, free shipping. And I'll sign every copy. I'll even write an inscription if you want me to for that. You can put it, you see it at our site at the bottom if you need an inscription. Along with, we give you a couple extra little goodies in there that are kind of fun about Graystone as well. And so you can do that. You can go to Amazon if you'd like. Get it at Amazon. There's an ebook at Amazon as well. And we're working on the audiobook, which should be out relatively soon, which will be a lot of fun as well from Amazon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Clete. I really appreciate it. And at some point, I'd like to have you back on and talk more about this because I think this is absolutely fascinating. All right. But thank you so much for coming on. And I'm sure everybody out there enjoyed it. And thank you.
Okay, my pleasure.
Thank you. All right. You have a good one.
Yep,
have a good holiday. All right. Bye-bye. All right. So that was a really good show. Learned a lot about the manor, and I always want to learn about that place, and I did. I got to read his book and all that. Anyway, glad you guys were here tonight. I had a few weird things going on with my camera towards the end there, where the camera was disappearing, coming back on. So I don't know if maybe what we were talking about was affecting it, or my internet strikes again. But that was kind of interesting. So we'll just see how the playback looks. But next week is going to be kind of different for me. We're going to be doing a show on child trafficking. It's a topic that I've always been interested in as a news reporter, and so I'm finally going to get to do something with it. But the kick of it all is that the person I'm interviewing, I have to interview at like 7 in the morning. So if anybody feels like they want to be up that early to take a look at the live interview, go ahead. If not, what I'm going to probably do is do the live interview, and then I'm going to do a pre-recorded show that night and just show it at the regular time at 6:30. So I'll see how it goes and how I feel after all that. But we are going to have a show next week. It'll be the 23rd, just night before Santa comes, and so we're going to be doing something. But like I said, it's going to be an odd day because I have to interview early in the morning. But thank you guys for coming tonight, and I appreciate it. And I will see you next week. Check us out at www.californiahaunts.org and share the show. Share the past shows. Even if you liked it, you didn't like it, share it with your enemies, whatever. Share the shows. And again, we are a nonprofit, and the team is nonprofit, so all this stuff comes out of my pocket pretty much. So if you guys could find it in your heart to maybe throw a couple bucks in to the PayPal, I'd appreciate it, so I can keep this stuff going and keep some really cool guests coming in. But again, I thank you, and we'll see you next week, if not sooner. Bye.